Michelle Malkin.
Sure.
She has Michelle Malkin Investigates. That's the name of her show on CRTV.com. It is fantastic. Michelle, welcome back. I got to get your first take on the delay of the Senate health care version of health care reform. Is this a good thing?
No. It's not.
It's not.
And this is my pose here for every time I have to read the headlines about the developments with the ObamaCare repeal botch. I think it's Exhibit A, a textbook case of why so many Americans in both parties are fed up with Washington. And I have long called out the bipartisan crap weasels on both sides of the aisle. Look, so many Republicans were elected. They had one job, repeal Obamacare.
That's all.
And that's it. And it's fairly clear to most ordinary Americans what repeal means. The problem with what's happening in the Senate now stems back to the House Republicans, who couldn't agree on a straight repeal. The repeal that they offered up during the Obama years. That was clear and that made sense and that did what they promised to do. But so many of these swamp creatures overpromise and under-deliver.
And you're talking about Republicans when you refer to swamp creatures.
I absolutely am. And of course, I'm talking as somebody who's been an out-of-the-closet conservative journalist for more than 25 years. So the idea that it's a surprise that they can't get their acts together before July 4th is ridiculous. In fact, it is very predictable,
Michelle,
for those of us who watched the Republican establishment.
You know, in reality, I know what your type of health care reform would be as a conservative. I get that. But in reality, if they do a clean repeal and a clean replace, they needed 60 votes. Are you saying they should have just forgot about, just not worried about not getting the 60 votes instead of trying to finesse something through to get 52 or to get 51?
Yeah, so I understand what you're saying about pragmatism, Brian, but this is about keeping promises. And with regards to being a conservative and what I think health care reform should be, I speak not from an ideological viewpoint here, but as somebody who had 3 private individual market plans canceled under Obamacare. And it's a matter of emphasis and priorities, okay? We had 8 years of Obama and liberal progressive Democrats who foisted this idea that forcing people to go on insurance plans was going to make everything great for everyone, when millions of people in the market that I belong to saw their health care taken away. Why is it that Republicans in Washington have to kneel and capitulate and allow liberal progressive Democrats to dictate the terms of the policy debate here?
Michelle, I'm with you. My daughter's on Obamacare, and so many of the Democrats are talking about Obamacare fondly as if it's the gold standard. But the problem for the Republicans in the Congress right now is because if they fail to undo Obamacare, whatever it is, conservative voters are never going to trust them again. Never, ever, ever. They were elected, many of them, for this one job. And right now it doesn't look like they're going to, unlike Larry the Cable Guy, not going to get her done.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it, Steve. And you know what? They will face those consequences, and they deserve those consequences.
Now, Michelle, are you okay with it?
If these conservative Republicans continue to hammer the point home about the losses and consequences of the impact of this government intervention on ordinary working Americans who don't want handouts, if they were leading, then we'd get there.
But the thing is, Michelle, everything you're saying is correct. But in reality, they're not all conservatives on the right. There are moderates, and they are going to put their weight in, and there's only 52 votes. Remember, President Obama had 60. That's the only reason he got it passed. He barely got that done. So in reality, how do you get the 8 more Democratic votes? Well, do you just put something out there that will fail?
Yeah, well, if it were me, I would emphasize again that this isn't just about Medicaid. And look, President Trump won because he understood that there were warped priorities in Washington, that the forgotten men and women of America. And that's what we're talking about here when we talk about the impact that this massive Obamacare plan had on people whose health care was taken away.
Right.
All right, we want to move on and talk about what happened in the briefing room yesterday. Sarah Huckabee Sanders was standing at the podium. She was standing in for Sean Spicer because she's the deputy press secretary. And she has kind of a heated exchange with one of the reporters in the audience. She was talking about how, hey, you all want to talk about Russia, Russia, Russia. We need to talk about what really matters. We need to talk about tax reform and health care and so on and so on. And so this one reporter gets upset and says, you're just inflaming all of us. Listen to this exchange and then we'll talk about it. I want to hear your reaction to this.
Everybody, right here, right now, with those words, this administration has done that as well. Why, in the name of heavens, any one of us, right, are replaceable, and any one of us, if we don't get it right, the audience has the opportunity to turn the channel or not read us. You have been elected to serve for 4 years at least. There's no option other than that. We're here to ask you questions.
I disagree completely. First of all, I think if anything has been inflamed, it's the dishonesty that often takes place by the news media. And I think it is outrageous for you to accuse me of inflaming a story when I was simply trying to respond to his question.
And by the way, this was also based on the CNN story, which they had to apologize for.
Yeah, that's right. I think that Sarah Huckabee Sanders did a great job there of standing up to a so-called reporter who was essentially a political operative, and the inflammation is coming from these journalists who are acting in such a partisan manner and pretending to have this shield of neutrality around them.
You know, it's interesting because the Media Research Center did an they looked at all the time that Big Three networks spent on stuff. The Russia Comey investigation, 353 minutes between May 17th and June 20th. Climate change, 47 minutes. Fighting terrorism, 29 minutes. Obamacare repeal and replace, 17 minutes. And the economy and jobs, which are always important, only 5 minutes. You know, it would be one thing, Michelle, if there was some there regarding Russia and collusion, but there just hasn't been any proof that there is any.
Yeah, well, Russia-itis certainly has infected so much of the mainstream media elite. And I learned a useful phrase recently. Apparently, the Russian phrase for fake news is podolye novosti. How's that for my pronunciation?
Hashtag what?
Podolye novosti.
Right.
I know I'm going to get a million tweets about my awful pronunciation.
Are you shocked that the next topic they spend a lot of time on was climate change?
Of course not. These are narrative shapers and narrative warpers. And meanwhile, there's so much injustice. There's so many other real stories going on in the world. But these people have an agenda, and they refuse to admit it. And I have to give a shout out to James O'Keefe and Project Veritas, who've been exposing that. They did yesterday, which is why it was the subject of the White House press briefing, and of course of a lot of consternation among the people who'd rather cover their bias up.
Well, and a producer was exposed, and you could see that everywhere. A producer was exposed on camera, not denied by CNN, coming out and saying that they don't see any Russian angle, but they're told to push it forward because it means ratings.
BS. Yeah.
That's right, and there's more coming.
Oh, really?
Really?
Interesting stuff. All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Michelle.